Hey, how you doing? It's me, Nick Digilio. Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. If you're checking me out on Patreon, thank you for that as well. Hey, I've got a couple of podcasts that I host that are new twice a week. The Nick D Podcast, which is a pop culture entertainment podcast, very similar to what I used to do on the radio with movie reviews and talking about entertainment and pop culture, music and movies and books and theater, and I have great guests and a lot of fun. It's a great podcast. You should check it out. Also, at Radio Misfits is my Saturday Night Live podcast called That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, an SNL podcast all about SNL. If you love SNL, it's a must listen. It's the best SNL podcast out there, period, bar none. And you can check them all out at the Radio Misfits Podcast Network, radiomisfits.com. Tuesdays and Fridays, new episodes of Nick D Podcast. Every Wednesday, new episodes of the SNL podcast. But they are now streaming live. You can check it out at radiomisfits.live. Radiomisfits.live. And Radio Misfits is now a streaming service, 24 hours a day, streaming all the shows and the podcasts and all the cool stuff at Radio Misfits. And you can hear my podcasts. You can hear That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years daily at 9 a.m. Central. Every day, 9 a.m. Central, you can hear episodes of That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, an SNL podcast. And at 3 p.m. Central daily, you can hear the Nick D Podcast, episodes of that. So, 9 a.m. daily, That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, and the Nick D Podcast, 3 p.m. daily. It'll be streaming live for free at radiomisfits.live. So, you can subscribe to the podcast. They're free at every single platform in the world, so please do that. But you can also listen on the live stream network, radiomisfits.live. Again, That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, the SNL podcast, daily at 9 a.m. And the Nick D Podcast, 3 p.m. daily on radiomisfits.live. And give money to the Patreon page if you can, because all the podcasts are all free. The stuff that I do on radio, I am your movie critic at WLS AM 890, the big 890. I am on the Steve Cochran Show as a film critic. You can hear me every other Friday or so, and even more than that, on WLS AM Chicago. That's right, the big AM 890 on the Steve Cochran Show. I'm your movie critic. So that's free. The podcasts are free. These videos are free. So check out Patreon and give some doughs. Patreon.com/NickD Show. $3, $6, pick a tier, be a patron, be cool. It helps out a lot. Everything I do is for free. So the least you can do, donate a little money. Patreon.com/NickD Show. Okay. Day 2 of the Chicago Critics Film Festival. I've explained what it is. My friends have put this film festival together. It's celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Chicago Critics Film Festival. It's the only film festival in the world to be programmed by film critics. I'm a member of this association, the Chicago Film Critics Association, and my cohorts at the association, Eric Childress and Brian Tellerico, are the guys who are the producers of this film festival, and a whole bunch of other people who are within the association program it. It's the 10th anniversary. It is taking place this full week. This is day 2. There are 7 nights full at the Music Box Theater on Southport in Chicago, the best theater in the world. Here it is right there. Yeah, 10th anniversary. And they've been doing some amazing stuff. They've been showing some brand new movies that have, that are new to Chicago that you've not seen before. They played film festivals around the world. So you're seeing movies that are all over the place, every kind of genre, every kind of language, everything. And so it's a great, great film festival. And I am giving you full reviews. I am going every single day except for one day. And I am reviewing all the movies and all the things that have happened there during this festival. Check out musicboxtheater.com or chicagocriticsfilmfestival.com as well for full schedule and all kinds of cool stuff. So let me tell you about my Saturday, day 2, a long day. Got there at 11:30 in the morning and was there until midnight. So I was there for over 12 hours, and I saw a bunch of really great stuff, and there were a lot of cool events and some great guests. So let me give you a rundown on day 2 of the Chicago Critics Film Festival, programmed by my friends. Let me just say that I'm having a blast. I love going there and hanging out with my friends, and I'm really good friends now with everybody at the Music Box, so I hang out and talk with the people at the Music Box who are unbelievably cool. The best movie venue in the world, and my friends at the Chicago Film Critics are showing up to watch and to program and to host Q&As. I just love hanging out in the lobby, talking with my friends and talking movies, and it's been a great time. So day 2, saw first the shorts program #1. My good friend Colin Suter is a tremendous film critic and a film scholar and a filmmaker himself, who has made a couple of features and documentaries and short films as well. He's tremendous, and he programs the short films from around the world. He watches a ton of shorts that have played film festivals from all over the place, and then he pan-picks the ones and puts them together in 2 different programs. So the first one was at 11:45 this morning, Saturday morning, and it consisted of 8 shorts. And it was one, they were called The Mundane's Womb, The Vacation, Thriving, Endless Sea, Beyond the Fringe, I Have No Tears and I Must Cry, and Breaking Silence. All 8 shorts were terrific. They were all strong. They were all different types. There was comedy, there was animation, there was documentary, there was completely off the wall kind of crazy stuff and some serious stuff. And it covered all kinds of boundaries and all kinds of genres. And let me just say something. Colin does an amazing job programming this. He programs these shorts and puts them all together to have an emotional arc, to have connecting themes, and to have huge emotional and comedic payoffs when the time is right. He picks these shorts from thousands of shorts and then picks them and puts them in the specific order where you watch them. And he does it beautifully. The structure is unbelievable. The payoff is great. The themes are great. He does a great job. Colin Suter does a great job. My favorite of the shorts, they were all good, but my favorite of the shorts was called Endless Sea, which is about a woman who is desperately trying to get her medication, her heart medication, because the copay has gone up, and she has a terrible job delivering flowers, and she might die by the end of the night if she does not get her medication. And that's what it's about. It's about this woman desperately, in the heart of New York, desperately trying to get some money to get her meds so that she can, live. It's powerfully acted. It uses a couple of Iggy Pop songs. It was my favorite of all of them, but all 8 were good. And Colin Suter does a fantastic job with the shorts. So a great shorts program. His second shorts program is going to be Monday at 5, if you want to check it out at the Music Box Theater. I guarantee you it'll be a great collection of short films because Colin Suter is fantastic. Okay, next, after that was, at 2:15, was Afire, A-F-I-R-E, Afire. And it was directed by Christian Petzold, who is a very famous and critically acclaimed German director who directed such movies as Transit and Undine and Phoenix. His movies are very popular, especially at the Music Box. They show them all the time. And his latest movie is called Afire, and it's about 4 people who are new and old friends who are staying at this cabin in the woods as a brush fire is eating up all the forest. And as this fire is getting closer and closer to where they are, the tension is getting bigger and bigger in the house with the relationships between the people that are there, one of whom is a writer, one of whom is a lifeguard, one of whom is an artist, one of whom is a photographer. And it's about the clashes between them and how this intensifies as the fire gets closer. It's a good movie, not a great movie. It's well acted. It's got some interesting stuff. There's a really huge payoff in the last 15 to 20 minutes, but it kind of takes a while to get there, mainly because the main character is kind of a jagoff, and it's kind of hard to follow this guy for that first hour and 10 or hour and 15. It's interesting and well acted, but it's hard to follow your lead character. But the payoff at the end is great. So overall, not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, not one of this director's best movies, but a pretty good film and definitely worth seeing. And I enjoyed it. That was called Fire. The next movie was called The Unknown Country, which is directed by Marissa Maltz, who was actually there to do a Q&A. She introduced her film, and then she did the Q&A afterwards. This is a movie, it's a very odd film. It's a movie about a Lakota family that reaches out to one of their family members, played by Lily Gladstone, and she takes a road trip from Minnesota down to Texas to reunite with her Lakota family, and it's about that road trip. And she stops off at a lot of different places, including dance clubs and malls and diners, and visits a bunch of different families, reunites with her family, learns a lot about her history. And the film is weird because it's part documentary, because a lot of the people that she visits are real people who have real stories, and it's part, a fiction. And the mix doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. You don't really care about the main character, and the way they handle the real characters is really messy. Like, one minute you're watching a documentary with voiceover, veering away from the main storyline to give you the story of these real people in real life, and it doesn't work. It takes, and what they did was they like took these real people, but then they improvised the storyline around them. The structure doesn't work, although it's beautifully shot. It's a great looking road movie. It has some very Terrence Malick-like moments visually that are kind of nice. I wasn't crazy about the lead, and I just didn't like the style of the movie. The message is really great. It makes statements about Native Americans. It makes statements about Lakota. It makes statements about people living their lives and freedom. So what the movie's intention is really honorable and really lovely. But as a mixture of fiction and documentary and jumping back and forth in styles, doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. But it's one of these movies that is so, what it wants to do and what it does is so well-intentioned that you feel like an asshole for not liking it. So I felt like a total jag-off when the movie was over, and I didn't like it very much, and I didn't like the mixing of fiction and documentary in a very unsteady style, and having real people improvise with actors, and it's just a very mixed-up movie. But the intention is great, the message is great, so I'm not recommending it because I don't think it's good, but I feel like an asshole for not liking it. Okay, so after that, we got into some horror. Okay, so there was a horror double feature to close out the night. And the next movie is called Birth, Rebirth. And it is from director Laura Moss. They directed this movie and co-wrote it. And it's great. It is kind of a takeoff. Laura Moss introduced the movie, and she was there for a Q&A afterwards, the co-writer and director, Laura Moss. And she said that she had this idea batting around in her brain since she was 13 years old when she read Frankenstein. And the movie is about two women. One is a mother, and one is desperately trying to recreate life. And the daughter of one woman dies and is brought back to life by the other woman. And one is a scientist who works in a medical center, and one is a nurse and a surgeon who helps deliver babies. And is basically about bringing her child back to life via Frankenstein with unbelievable medical experiments that involve pigs and uterine lining and placebos and all kinds of crazy stuff. The two women that conduct these experiments are played by Marin Ireland, who you remember from a ton of stuff, including The Irishman and a bunch of other stuff. She's been in a ton of stuff. Hell and High Water. She's great in Hell and High Water. And Judy Reyes, who you remember from Scrubs. They play the two women who are messing with science and messing with death, bringing a daughter back to life and doing it in a very Frankenstein, David Cronenberg kind of way. It's a horror movie, but it's more than that. It's rich with ideas. It's rich with relationships. It's also really twisted, very much inspired by stuff like David Cronenberg and Dead Ringers and things like that. And it's got great performances. It's very funny, but really dark, and has a very body horror style to it that is very, very much like a David Cronenberg movie, and very much like Todd Haynes' movie Safe, which the director, Laura Moss, said that she was inspired by. She was inspired by Todd Haynes' Safe, which is a great film, which I just saw very recently, and inspired by other movies. The acting is tremendous. It's got a great message. It's dark. It's twisted. If you like David Cronenberg, creepy, really heavy body horror, you'll love this movie. I think it's great. I think it's one of the best movies of the year. And I will be hard pressed to find a better movie at this year's Chicago Critics Film Festival than Birth, Rebirth. A fantastic horror movie, of a stunning first feature for this director. They did a hell of a job, and they're an amazing director. And I got to meet them after the screening and talk to them, and they're going to be on my podcast. So you can look for Laura Moss. The movie will get a release in August, and then it will be on Shudder, the horror streaming service. It's called Birth/Rebirth. Birth, Rebirth. Body horror at its best, filled with amazing ideas and intelligence, with terrific acting. The centerpiece, acting is amazing, and it's really twisted and really dark and very Cronenbergy, Todd Haynesy body horror up front. Awesome, with incredible acting and a great, great sense of humor as well. Dark, twisted, horror at its finest, Birth, Rebirth, from director Laura Moss, who will be appearing on my podcast, the Nick D podcast, probably in July, to talk about the release of the movie. But I don't think I'll see a better movie at this film festival. And then to close out the night, for me, because there was a midnight show of A Disturbance in the Force, which is the documentary about the infamous Christmas Star Wars Christmas holiday special. But I did not stay for that because I've seen it and it's pretty good. But they had that at midnight. But the next movie to close out the night for me was a horror film called Brooklyn 45, which was shot here in Chicago, takes place in Brooklyn in December of 1945 at the very end of the war. And it's about a bunch of people who are in a room. Some are soldiers, some are spies, some are interrogators. And it's about them conducting a seance to reach one of the people's dead wives. And they open a door to the other side, and then like the spirits come and all hell breaks loose. So it all takes place in one room, shot here in Chicago by a crew of Chicagoans and a bunch of Chicago actors. And the funny thing was, at the beginning of the movie, there's because most of it takes place in one room. So it all takes place in one room with all these people in one room. And it's not really, I had to adjust myself because I thought it was going to be it's another Shudder production. And it came after watching a really great, brilliant horror movie like Birth Rebirth. And then I had to adjust myself because this is kind of a chamber drama. It's like it's like a parlor room drama, kind of Agatha Christie thing with like 6 characters in one room. And it's very talk heavy. It's very dialogue heavy and very talky. And the supernatural stuff is very limited until the last 15 minutes, and then kind of all of the shit hits the fan. It gets gory. There's great practical gore makeup effects. But it's too little too late. I thought the actors were committed. I just didn't think it was very clever. And as intense as it wants to be as this one room, very play theater-like drama about these 6 characters, like talking a lot about the war and making it intense, and then supernatural elements come in. It never really comes together. The practical effects are fantastic. It's cleverly cut together, and the acting is very good. But overall, I didn't care about what was going on. It's not really a horror movie that I thought it was going to be, which of course is not the movie's fault. It's my fault for thinking that. And also, it was shot here in Chicago, and it's supposed to take place in Brooklyn in 1945. And the opening shot is of a fucking 2-flat in Chicago. That's all it is. You look at it and you're like, we are not in Brooklyn. We're on Sheffield Avenue. That's like next to a bungalow, and there is a classic 2-flat, Chicago 2-flat. That is not Brooklyn. So right from and I know that they shot, because the director, or not the director, but the actor was there, one of the actors, and the crew was there because they shot the movie here in Chicago and used a Chicago crew. So they were all there having a great time. There was a Q&A afterwards, and all the people that worked on the movie were there, and it was great for them. It was great to have a whole bunch of people. The movie's not very good. It's not very good at all. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it on Shudder, but it was great for them, locals doing a movie, having it shown at the Music Box. So that was great. But you're not fooling anybody. If you're from Chicago and you're trying to sell that building that you show at the beginning as a building in Brooklyn, no. That was a fucking classic, 2-flat Chicago apartment. And there's no two ways about it. If you live in Chicago, the windows were round at times, in spots. It's a goddamn absolutely quintessential Chicago 2-flat apartment building. Wasn't Brooklyn. So immediately I was taken out. So anyway, not a very good movie, great practical gore effects and some good acting. It's a chamber drama, Agatha Christie, very dialogue heavy, not much of a horror movie. And I wasn't crazy about it. So overall, of the movies that I saw today, the shorts program was fantastic. The second best thing I saw all day today. All of the shorts were great, and particularly Endless Sea was fantastic. And again, Colin Suter did a magnificent job programming it. And make sure you go and check out his second shorts program on Monday night. I would say that was the second best thing. Afire was good but not great. Unknown Country, not very good. Brooklyn 45, not very good. But Rebirth is a great movie, a tremendous movie. I really seriously don't think I'll see a better movie at the Chicago Critics Film Fest this year. And it was lovely to meet Laura Moss, who I got to talk to. And, I took a picture with them, and they are fantastic, and they're going to be on my podcast. Got to talk to them, and we had a fantastic conversation. We talked about Cronenberg, and they said, yeah, I ripped off Dead Ringers. What am I going to tell you? That's what they said. And it was fantastic to have the conversation with them. And I loved their movie. It's one of the best I've seen all year. In fact, it's one of the best movies of the year. And a quintessentially awesome body horror movie with a lot of brilliant ideas. That stuff that dates back to Frankenstein. It's that fucking good. And great central performances. So, Birth, Rebirth. That's the takeaway from this day at the festival. And I will be there again tomorrow. I will see 5 movies on a Sunday, starting at noon and going all the way till midnight. I'll be there 12 hours again, having a magnificent time, hanging out with my friends, the film critics, and being a part of it. We also celebrated Dan Geyer, who is a legendary film critic who I've known for fucking ever. He celebrated his 70th birthday tonight. We had a great time, had a cake, sang, and all that kind of stuff. It's been a great 2 nights so far at the Chicago Critics Film Festival, and you need to get your ass there now. MusicBoxTheater.com. Get your tickets now. So much more happening all the way until Thursday the 11th. So get your ass there. And that's my review of Day 2 of the Chicago Critics Film Festival. A fantastic festival that you should come to. Yeah.